Welcome to a special edition of Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. I'm Ritwika Gupta. The education industry saw a dramatic transformation after the onset of the pandemic in 2020. As several players enter the industry, it is important to identify the ones that offer trust, innovation, and a rich experience. Here's a quick look at the industry so far. Disruption, innovation, competition, and opportunity. EdTech has transformed the way in which students engage with education. In India, the sector is among the fastest growing in the world, poised to reach $5 billion by 2025.
The last few years saw the rise of EdTech players. EdTech from its the initial excitement phase got into a more corporate-like phase, and hence consolidation started to happen.
Since 2014, the Indian market witnessed the launch of 4,450 EdTech startups, out of which 6 joined the Unicorn Club. But things are changing post the pandemic. Several large companies which were once on a hiring spree are now laying off their employees to sustain their businesses.
Some of these things were not successful. That led to they pulling back out of the sector and maybe some layoffs as a result of it. The other reason could be most of the private equity invested companies, there is some pressure from the investors to cut costs, to grow fast, to multiply many of their results, and this could have caused some heating up of the system, and that could be another reason why we're seeing a round of layoffs and trimming. EdTech players should move from valuation to value creation and innovation. That's going to be the big change which will define the success of EdTech players going forward.
To understand the significance of the industry today, we'll be in conversation with Sumeet Mehta, CEO and co-founder, Lead. Thank you for joining us, Sumeet.
My pleasure.
So, the EdTech sector has really seen an unprecedented boom, especially since 2020. But right now it seems like we are slowly moving towards an industry where only a few big players may exist. So I want to first begin by really asking you, what is the role and relevance of EdTech today? And given the changes that it has seen, in the last couple of years, how has that impacted you as a company?
The relevance of EdTech is higher than ever today because, if you look at Prime Minister Modi's Atmanirbhar Bharat call, I think Atmanirbhar Bharat cannot happen without having self-confident students. Now, I know EdTech has gone through an upheaval because during COVID we saw an increase, and then as students have gone back to school, some of the online education has gone down. Right. For us, it is net positive because we've always believed that students spend 6 hours in school. So if we have to improve our quality of education, we've got to work with schools, and that's why Lead has been very focused on school EdTech. So for us, we see a higher relevance for school EdTech going forward.
If you could, for our viewers, really explain what school EdTech means and how that is different from consumer EdTech, and also the kind of offerings and initiatives that you have that will help you stand out from others in this competitive space.
Yeah, it's important actually to appreciate this difference because popularly EdTech has been confused with only consumer EdTech, which actually is tuitions online. Mm-hmm. And tuitions have always had a role to play in India as a band-aid because the schooling system was weak. So our thesis was that if we fix the schooling system itself where the child spends 6 hours, then maybe there isn't any need for tuitions. So school EdTech focuses on transforming schools, while consumer EdTech, as it is popularly known, is either focused on at-home tuitions or test preparation. So in school EdTech, our real role is to see how do we transform the performance of each of the stakeholders in schools, whether it is teachers, principals, school owners, and students. So any system like Lead, which works in transforming schools, is school EdTech. And in India, while most consumer EdTech players are focusing on tuitions and test prep, Lead is perhaps the only integrated system player which is focused on transforming schools by improving the performance of all stakeholders.
At this point, I also want to talk about some of the challenges that are brewing in the industry. There have been several reports of, companies laying off employees, slashing salaries, and even shutting down. Why do you think this is happening, especially after such an exponential growth in 2020?
See, there's a saying that if you hear about a boom in an industry in the media, it's already too late. So during COVID, what happened was, I think there were a lot of people who jumped in because schools were closed and online education was the only option. So there were a lot of people, I think, who came in and supply far outstripped demand because when, because of COVID receding, schools reopened, students didn't have time after school to attend online. So a lot of players who jumped into the online education bandwagon then realized the demand reducing and therefore the cost of acquisition of players increasing. So to my mind, it is normal ebb and flow of a new industry where people have to find an equilibrium. Until that equilibrium comes, there's a lot of experimentation. For any person in EdTech, I think the first primary focus should be on, are they delivering the learning outcomes for which they are designed? So if you are in test prep, are you delivering the outcome? If you are in school EdTech, are you really seeing a measurable improvement in learning outcomes? If you get that part right, then everything else actually follows. Because ultimately parents are sending their children to school to learn. And if you can deliver that learning in an affordable manner, then parents would love it, because every parent's aspiration is to give good education to their children. So my sense is, anybody who's in EdTech, I think if we can deliver outcomes, then commercial success kind of follows in. In LEAD we say, if you deliver Saraswati, Lakshmi follows. And I think that's a good kind of mantra to follow in EdTech.
I also want to talk about the role of trust. Do you think it is time we sort of sit and re-examine the trust we put in EdTech, or do you think players in this segment are doing enough to build a trustworthy brand presence?
Every EdTech entrepreneur really needs to ask themselves first on why are they doing it. Because education, like health, is a double bottom line business. It is, return on equity is not enough. Return on education is equally important. So if you are focused on this double bottom line, you will not go wrong. But if you're focused on only one part, then eventually I think we end up taking decisions which in the long term come back and bite us. So a person's personal values kind of reflect in the corporate values. So I think that's a very individual decision every EdTech entrepreneur has to make. And you can see that long-term sustainable enterprises would be built by people whose core value system is anchored on what is right for the child. If your core value system is anchored on what is right for the child, then in the long term you won't go wrong. So I think that's the important question to ask.
Nice. Sumeet, you have been an entrepreneur for many, many years. There's a certain romance and glamour attached to being an entrepreneur. So what advice would you have for businesses that want to get into this segment, the kind of preconditions and what they should keep in mind before really jumping into the deep water?
I think entrepreneurship is great if you care deeply about the problem. So for me, what really works is that the problem that we're trying to solve, which is giving access to quality education to every child in the country, is a deep, hard, large problem, which even if we continue to persist during our lifetime, we'll move the needle, it will not get solved. Right? So if as an entrepreneur you care deeply about the problem and you're willing to persist and persevere, then entrepreneurship is great.
Finally, what are some of the trends are you excited about in this segment, and some things which you also foresee coming up in the next few years?
I think the ideal situation in education is that if we are able to provide every child the path to achieve their true potential. Now in mass education, which is school, it is 1:40, one teacher, 40 kids. So personalization is not really possible in the classroom, right? Now what LEAD has done through the use of technology and through the use of teacher enablement, we are able to move every child forward. But there are still areas where technology, personalization and data science will actually move the needle for every child. So the future for me is when whatever we are learning from brain science about how children learn, and whatever capability we are building through technology to reach every child, when they intersect, then every child will have a path to achieve their true potential. So that's really the direction where education will go, and that's what excites me.
Well, that was really insightful. Thank you so much, Sumeet.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thank you.
It's time now for a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. Now, when you're competing in the education market, which is so big and volatile, how do you make your own brand of mark? Can a great product necessarily translate to success? And where does India stand in the global education space? All that and more, I'll be in conversation with Siddharth Banerjee, Managing Director, India and Asia, Pearson. Thank you, Siddharth, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here, Ritwika.
There are a whole lot of things that need solving when it comes to education, be it online learning or personalized courses. So I want to first begin by asking you to tell us how Pearson is contributing to the overall education system in India.
So Pearson, as the world's learning company, has very interesting businesses in India, and we are focused on enabling lifelong learning journeys. As the way we say it in Pearson, adding life to a lifetime of learning. And so whether it is for the college and the university students, whether it is at the intersection of learning and employability, or whether it is in terms of enabling global mobility, Pearson is doing a lot in order to be part of the Indian education ecosystem.
Right. I want to quickly go back to 2020, the pandemic. It did cause a massive disruption to the education system. Can you talk to us about some of the changes that you have seen, over the last couple of years, and which ones are long-term and short-term?
I think the waves of technology have caused disruption in multiple industries across the world, and education has been one of them. In fact, the way we look at it is that the technological change has accelerated in the field of education and learning, and so therefore all stakeholders in the education ecosystem, including in India, are now more open to the idea that technology can enable education to happen remotely. Education can now be consumed by learners in ways and formats that are more relevant to them. And that's the reason why Pearson is also evolving and pivoting the way that we are able to provide decades and decades of expertise and experience in ways that are relevant for the 21st century learner.
Right. You mentioned technology, and while technology, online learning, and EdTech, in general, came to rescue during the pandemic, it also brought to the surface the reality of the digital divide. Do you think players in this segment need to focus on integrating offline and online learning experiences? Is the hybrid model something that you foresee in this segment?
See, in a country like India, we are not really one. We are multiple Indias, many Indias, from a consumer segmentation point of view. And so therefore it would be interesting for companies, including companies like us, to look at offerings that serve various segments of our Indian learners. So whether it is test prep, whether it is the courseware that we provide, whether it is digital solutions that we provide, I think the more and more we are able to have a portfolio which answers to the needs and the aspirations of different segments of Indian consumers, we'll be able to appeal to many Indias within India.
Pearson is a global learning company, and you have been in different markets. So when you come to a market like India, how is it different from other markets in the world, and in terms of trends, and where does India really stand in the global education space?
I think India, and I've said this in previous forums, India has the potential of being a global superpower in the field of education and learning. We have been so if you look at our history many centuries ago as well. And I think we are in an exciting phase where at one end we can leverage our demographic dividend, at the other end our technological prowess to solve for not only for India but other parts of the world as well. Now, when playing in India, there are three things which are important. One, looking at consumer insights in India and therefore figuring out products and solutions which are fit for India, and we are doing that at Pearson. The second is to figure out what are the right segments to play in which make the most amount of sense in terms of uplifting millions via education and learning into their next steps of the socioeconomic ladder, and therefore working with government stakeholders, working with other organizations. And that leads me to the third part, that this field is so vast and the opportunity is so massive that I personally believe that we can only be part of a solution if we enable partnerships to happen. And that's what, again, we are doing at Pearson. Look at upskilling, for example. We are partnering with some of the best B schools to offer courses and upskilling solutions for many thousands of our learners in colleges and universities. If you look at vocational or parallel track opportunities, we've recently partnered with Apollo MedSkills for nursing and allied health services. And we're looking to partner with many more such like-minded partners in the Indian education ecosystem.
What do you think the Indian consumer wants when it comes to education, and is the Indian consumer happy with what's being offered right now?
I think consumers are looking at education as a way of enriching their lives. So whether it is from a point of view of knowledge or whether it is from a point of view of life improvement. So I think that gets neatly encapsulated at a phrase that I recently heard at a campus of learn better, earn better. And I thought that was an evocative phrase for India because we are seeking to establish our place in the world. And so therefore, companies like us are enabling quality education, quality outcomes in order for our learners to perhaps learn better and earn better.
So what is Pearson doing differently to really stand out in this highly competitive market?
I think three things. First, our positioning in terms of what we bring onto the table, whether we are at a government forum or whether we are in a partnership or whether we are serving millions of our learners, is to be a responsible voice in the room. That's who we desire to be. That's what our heritage and our strengths have been in the past, and that's what we are very, very confidently building into the future. So that's one. The second is we are being part of and enabling multiple partnerships in the Indian education ecosystem so that combined we can solve problems that exist in the world today. The third is we are localizing and streamlining offerings that are meant for Indian consumers so that it is fit to the Indian market, whether it's our present suite of products or whether it's some of the future innovations coming in the next 1 to 2 years.
And what advice would you have for businesses, who are looking to make a brand presence in this segment? What are the things they should keep in mind before communicating with their consumers and stakeholders?
I think the core promise of a brand has to be twofold. One, it has to be something which resonates deeply with a consumer that the brand is seeking to serve. So that is the role of consumer insights and understanding truly what the consumer values. The second critical part of a good brand or of a great brand is authenticity. So figuring out how to deliver that value in a way that is authentic and sustainable. So I think those are the two principles on which I have built brands in the past, and the two principles on which I am leading Pearson in a very exciting time here in India.
I also want to talk about your first digital brand film featuring Vicky Kaushal. Tell us a little bit more about that and what convinced you that this will resonate with your consumers.
So I think if you look at the youth in India today, they're excited, they want to take their place in the world, they believe that they can compete with the world's best, and that's fantastic. So in a way, if I have to summarize it, the josh is high. And if the josh is high, if the energy levels are contagious, then what better than a Vicky coming and talking a little bit about his stories. And I think the intersection with Vicky Kaushal happened because we were looking at what Pearson believes in at the foundation of learning. So we are, of course, a global learning company, but at the foundation of learning, if you really look at it philosophically, is great preparation. And whether it is sports people or whether it is students preparing for an exam, or whether it is an actor preparing for his or her craft, it's all about great preparation. And when you prepare, sometimes you do need partners who help you prepare. And that's what we think is Pearson's role, a great partner in preparation. And so therefore, when we were looking at people who could tell the story with authenticity, Vicky Kaushal was such a perfect fit.
Thank you, Siddharth. It was great chatting with you.
Much welcome. Thank you.
It's now time to take a quick look at our CXO diary, where I asked Sumeet and Siddharth some quick-fire questions. Take a look at what they had to say.
Be the cause, not be at the effect.
Prepare, prepare, prepare.
Oh, leadership is leading self, leading others, and then leading work.
Take total accountability and get things moving.
Mornings, when everybody's asleep, I can actually make sense of the world.
I'm a night owl.
I'm always reading 2-3 books at the same time. So currently it's Alchemy and Early Indians both fascinating books.
Blacklist, all the seasons.
I tend to worry a lot.
Sometimes I'm a little impatient.
Oh, well, the vision that in India, we are able to build a confident country because we build confident kids, and that's really exciting.
Solving interesting challenges.
Mahatma Gandhi, Narendra Modi.
Paul Polman, the former CEO of Unilever.
Twitter.
Facebook, but more Instagram now.
Money is to basically not worry about so that you can pursue your dreams.
Freedom at one end and reassurance.
Working.
Trying to write my stories. Hopefully my third book will be out this year.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. We hope you enjoyed the conversations. Thank you and goodbye.